So here we are in the age of exploration. It's one of my most favorite topics to cover. Today is just kind of an intro and talking about why would people in Europe want to explore the world in the first place? What caused them? What motivated them to leave their continent or leave their country? There's something that's out there that is a pull factor, and we're going to find out what are those specifically. Okay, so a little bit of background. This is still during the Renaissance, and during the 1500s, the society was really transforming in Europe. And the fact that there's this new world out there and new trade routes are being expanded across the vast oceans, we're also going to see that there's an economic system called capitalism that's going to develop during this time, and new social classes are going to be established as well. So Europe's going to go through some changes, and whenever you engage into new products and new cultures and new peoples, it's going to make an influence upon you as a country and how you deal with that. The actual effects are going to be delayed because during this time the Reformation is still going to be going on. So that's our next chapter. And from the Reformation, there's going to be these religious wars fighting between the Protestants and the Catholics, and that is going to kind of hinder what is actually the impact of the age of exploration upon the continent. One thing to realize is that one of the major causes of this is that the Atlantic Ocean has been long a barrier, okay, for centuries, where very few people would ever even dare to cross the Atlantic Ocean because there's no way they could survive. But around this time, in the 16th century, with new technologies, it became a bridge, and it was really a gateway, a new beginning to endless possibilities of what was out there across this blue sea. Okay, so the causes, I'm going to be listing them out. Each of them are really important. The first and major motivation is the three G's. Okay, first G is God, then glory, and then gold. So remember, this is what we call our motives for old imperialism. God is the religious factor, glory is kind of the political factor, and the fame and the dominance, establishing colonies. Okay, and gold is obviously the economic motive. Like I said, there's going to be new investments in capitalism, in exploring overseas, and there's going to be a revolution that comes out of the age of exploration during this time called the commercial revolution. Okay, so that falls into the gold factor, the economic factor, that if I invest my money, right, I should get a larger profit in return. Okay, and then you also have the religious desire to convert the pagan world, right? And so that's kind of like the Crusades, except that now it's going to be taken to places that have not been converted or Christianized in a sense by the Catholic Church. Okay, in the Middle Ages, as you can see, there was the Crusades in the map in the lower hand corner. This is where you have a lot of boats, and they're going from port to port along the Atlantic, and they go through the Mediterranean, but they get to the Middle East, and the Venetians and the Ottomans all had like this dominance of acquiring these high-value commodities, luxury goods, spices, and stuff. And Europeans were very interested because the things that they were eating were very dull and routine. But we add a little spice in it, and I love spices when I cook. It really makes a huge difference, and they're really more than just flavor in eating, but they're very valuable and useful. Okay. So things that Europeans always wanted that would pay a lot of money for: silk, cotton, rugs, jewelry, porcelains, sugar, spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, nutmeg, and these things are not native to the European continent. They have to go to Asia and the Middle East to acquire these, and by the time they get to your doorstep, technically, right, delivered to you, they're going to be marked up, by 1,000%, extremely expensive. And so Europeans are willing to pay for this, and there's use for it too. For example, the preservation of meat and establishing a time where there's no refrigeration. Right, you're going to need to have types of medicines from these spices as well. okay, and just they become dependent upon it, okay. Um, so the Venetians, right, from Venice, and the Ottomans were the ones who have kind of held a monopoly on this type of trade, and Europeans are beginning to not be as dependent upon them. With the rise of the new monarchs, you have a competition where each empire is trying to stake its claims and establish a monopoly, and for them to not be under the um, kind of the dependency upon the Ottoman Empire, but they themselves can establish their own trading ports, and they can go get those spices, those luxury goods themselves, trade for it, sell and trade, and from that they can make the profit themselves and not be paying out these other empires. Okay, the Renaissance is also going to make an impact during this time because it's the spirit of the Renaissance where you have the search for knowledge, the idea that the individual is celebrated, right, and that individual can seek adventure and explore and seize the day, carpe diem. The study of classical texts also bring back the use of math, right, and in navigation, math is really important. The study of astronomy, right, and that's really important for navigation as well, and geography for cartography. So Europeans are using the values of the Renaissance of learning about the world around them, and they recognize, we're in a new age where, possibilities are endless, and with the printing press eventually going to be introduced into Europe, the spread of accurate information about the new world and just different places that they have sailed to, and even maps, right? It's going to be easier to reproduce those in mass quantity. Cartography is going to improve navigation. It's a study in the art of making maps, right? And so how can we make accurate maps? I'll go into detail of how the development took over time, but it wasn't like, oh, this map is exactly how the world is, right? They had many errors and they're very skewed, but over time with better technology and it's traveling more, they're able to make them more accurate. Major technological improvements in shipbuilding and also different instruments are going to be used to improve navigation so you don't get lost, so you know where you actually are, and you can chart your location at sea. So like different types of sails and compasses, and I'll be explaining these things, allow successful journeys to happen. Okay, so to go and give some detail about cartography, one of the first globes, the terrestrial globe by Martin Behaim, was called Erdapfel. Okay, Erdapfel is German for Earth Apple. So essentially, like the concept of having just a globe, right? They had ideas that the Earth was spherical in shape, but to make a globe instead of just having a map was a kind of development. But as you look in this example, it's not very accurate, and parts of Africa are too big, and Europe is way too big compared to what it really is. And then you have Waldseemuller's world map. This is in 1507, and this is the first map where they're able to separate the Americas with Asia, not just being one giant clump thing. But this is in 1507, and it's very skewed, as you can see at the top. America is like this weird skinny side diagonal thing. And then you have Mercator's map. He's a Flemish cartographer, and this is the end of the 1500s where he's establishing a map projection that's more accurate, that's incorporating longitude and latitude. And this is, cartography is essentially like a development over time of many different kinds of cartographers compiling the work together, building off of one each other. Okay, all right, different technological things. You have the compass, right? So compass obviously just points you north, and it allows you to know which direction are you going, right? And we still use them today. Okay. Then you have the astrolabe. This is from the Arabs, and they would use it to measure the height of the sun. They help you determine latitude by measuring the altitude of celestial bodies and stars. And then you have the quadrant. It's one of the earliest and simplest astronomical instruments that we're going to be seeing sailors use, and they also can determine altitude as well. Okay, it's kind of like a higher quality astrolabe. And the ships they use, it's called the caravel, and it's really unique because it's smaller. It's established by the Portuguese. It has square masts and also triangular masts. And so they're very specific in terms of they allow these ships now no longer just rowing manpower, but now you're using wind power to get certain sails to catch the wind a certain way. So the square ones is that you can sail against the wind, okay, and then you have the directing sails are the triangular ones. You can sail diagonally and stuff. The caravels are lighter, they're faster because they can navigate quicker, and and they're going to be used along the African coast. They have different rudders and all kind of stuff. You can even load cannons onto there. I think you can kind of see like there's little holes on the side on these. So when you put gunpowder and cannons onto your ship, you can basically blow things up, and the indigenous people in Africa can't really do anything about it, right? And you're just dominating them in that sense. Here is a couple of images, right? So the first one on the left shows you the fear, right? This is a painting of the Earth being flat. You're going to fall off the face of the Earth, right? And so for many centuries, this is what they believed, and we're going to be talking about circumnavigation, and actually it'll prove that the world is round and no longer flat. Okay. On the right, this is from a nautical manual, and it's just showing a publication of the different instruments. So you can see the compass, right? You can see quadrant, astrolabe, even the cross staff. The cross staff is that like long pole thing that has like a crossbar against it, and that's also looking into the stars to get your location, your altitude. Okay. All right. So very quickly, the Portuguese are the first ones to really break through and to be the ones establishing an agenda, okay, to go outside of Europe successfully. Okay. Portugal, the reason why is because agriculturally they are very poor. They had a small population, and they looked to possibly maybe outside of them, right? And so they're hanging on to the Iberian Peninsula. They're hanging on to Spain at this point, and they don't really have much to go, so they must go towards the sea. And so that kind of like forces them to learn how to sail, and they're going to be successful in that. They have certain motives as a country. For one, they want to seek their own route to get to Asia and to get involved in the spice trade. Before that, they're going to be dependent on buying it for higher quantities or higher prices. And also there's the religious motive to find this guy named Prester John. Okay, Prester John is actually it's an old story, right, that has never been proven to be true, but legend has it that Prester John, also known as John Prester, was this Christian king out in Ethiopia, and he was a descendant of the three wise men that met Jesus, and he actually has his own kingdom that's ongoing in Africa, and he's establishing and ruling over the indigenous people, and he takes care of them and all this kind of stuff. So they actually want to meet this Prester John, and they're going to be traveling to Africa in search to find him. Okay, so the caravels, as I said, right, are going to be the ships that the Portuguese invent, and that's what allowed them to go to different little islands to start off the coast of Portugal and also northwest Africa. Henry the Navigator is the prince of Portugal. He is one of the three sons of the king of Portugal at that time, and he's going to be the patron of Portuguese exploration, right? And so he's going to sponsor and finance more different types of explorational journeys down the coast of Africa. He's going to establish what we call a school of navigation, but it's not an actual school. He's just been kind of like investing in people to train others in cartography and navigation and a lot of kind of stuff. But they don't have like a building and classes and curriculum and that kind of thing. Okay, so what is he really known for? His main objectives essentially was that along the West African coastline, he himself would not go, but he would actually support financially different types of explorers to set up trading posts along the coast, and they're really looking for gold, right? So the motives, first and foremost, is the economic, right? And they're going to be successful, right? Along the coast, they're going to be able to find it around the 1460s to 80s. And then, secondly, is this whole fascination with Prester John. Okay, from this, right, Lisbon is going to be the gold capital, the financial capital, for a period of time, and the Portuguese and the Spanish and those in the Low Countries are going to be the new financial capitals to receive these golds and silvers, these precious metals, and to introduce them into Europe in mass quantities. And it's going to bring a lot of wealth to their countries. And so this is what we say it's going to usher in a new era of European exploration, starting with the Portuguese. So in class, we're going to be going over different explorers. Okay, it's very exciting, and we'll see what happens.